Now if this video gets 300 likes, I will make sure I bring out my Age of Empires vs 0 AD comparison video within the next few weeks. So maybe some guys can actually, if they've never played Age of Empires, check out what that game is about as well. But make sure you follow this channel if you love this sort of content, but if not, give me some feedback down below. But until then, I will see you in the next one. Bye bye everybody. Shut up. Age of Empires has always been the grandfather of real-time strategy, from its humble beginnings with AoE up to the thrilling announcement of the 4th edition to the franchise. Yet, in the modern age of gaming, 0 AD has been an up-and-coming tribute to Age of Empires, but can it take over this older IP? In this video, I'm going to be comparing both Age of Empires and 0 AD with both their advantages and disadvantages. If you don't know anything about 0 AD, I definitely recommend you guys go and watch my previous video on the matter. Oh, and so few people actually understood the Monty Python references. I feel ashamed. Being set around similar times, I'll be focusing more on Age of Empires 1 than the others, but since it is a big franchise, these points will relate widely to the other games as well. 0 AD being more a modern game brings so many advantages with it. Having a constantly working developer team gives it so much more accessibility, where patches, optimization and growth can happen at a constant rate. This is where Age of Empires suffers somewhat. Yes, granted, the reins of development of Age of Empires 2 was taken over in order to continue with a HD remake, and modding support was a great choice for the game with Steam Workshop integration. Furthermore, numerous expansions and DLCs have released since, keeping its player base hot and still going. Yet the communication with the audience is starting to lack in the Age of Empires franchise. This coincides greatly with the announcement and work on Age of Empires Definitive Edition and AoE 4. Devs are working on these up-and-coming titles rather than catering to complaints of the current games, and more of just letting players deal with what they've already got. But what about the new ones when they come out? Won't the developers listen to the player base after a new release? Well, yeah, somewhat, but Age of Empires is becoming a well-known big franchise now. It's unlikely that they'll be able to manage the same PR as a small indie game such as 0 AD. These guys are a small group of developers who just wanted to create their dream mod for Age of Empires 2. Encountering many issues with the limited engine of the aging game, the modders parted to go on their own project and their own way, starting the engine from scratch. This small indie game is a definition of made by gamers for gamers, thus getting a player-based decisions heard is much more easier for these smaller companies. Moving on to one of the biggest points though in the video is modding support. Oh, I bloody love mods. In 2013, Age of Empires 2 HD Edition was released, to much praise by the fans, something more recent and more flexible than the older games, yet there were still some limitations. The engine wasn't open, meaning modding slight changes into the game was possible, but nothing like some games today. 0 AD was created to be this open source Age of Empires type game, not only to recreate the nostalgia of the series, but give players and modders alike more freedom to craft their game experience to the way they choose and their preferences, having the ability to change graphics, mechanics, textures, or even complete era conversions. This gives much more opportunity for longevity in the game and keeping the player base interested for longer expanses of time. Even if you don't see yourself as a modder, an open source game like 0 AD has no boundaries, so it's a great way to introduce you into this modding scene, especially of the Age of Empires type. So this new one is better than Age of Empires then? No, not at all. The advantages of having an already established franchise to play with is the power behind such an engine. Optimization will be attuned to a wider variety of computers, and reliability is crucial. As the Age of Empires series has Microsoft behind it, being able to make a stable game is no issue, yet having a small group of modders like 0 AD create a game from scratch can often be unstable to say the least, and even at points unplayable. I'm happy to say though, this isn't really an issue with 0 AD, although optimization options and accessibility for the game to a more polarized range of PCs is definitely not well refined and executed as it is in the already established AoE series. In terms of player base, I mean, they're pretty equal. I would say Age of Empires has an edge in terms of their loyal fans. Gamers have been with the franchise throughout the years, through thick and thin, willing to stick with them to the very end. Still playing the game nearly 2 decades later is an astounding success for the Age of Empires community. And yes, this is still pretty close with Zero AD, since Zero AD is a newer game, so of course people are coming to that more often now than Age of Empires, but the such loyal fans are still there in the AoE franchise. But Zero AD I still don't think has quite caught up with this, and I'm not sure it ever will.
Is that because it's a copy of Age of Empires?
No. Zero AD is not a copy of Age of Empires, no matter what may be coming across at the moment and what you may be seeing on screen. It is a tribute to the loved by generations series. The developers came from Age of Empires to Zero AD in order to tribute their beloved game. Yet this comes with its disadvantages. While Age of Empires fans may flock to Zero AD for their free, open-sourced goodness, they will always be loyal to Age of Empires. And even gamers only being introduced to this genre now, and have never played Age of Empires today, and they're being introduced through Zero AD, then they will most likely move to AoE in the future, as that's the mainstay for RTS gaming of this genre, and it's a more refined and bigger fanbase, and will always be its strongest motives. This means that it's publicised more people know about Age of Empires than Zero AD, so I feel like Zero AD is never really going to be able to catch up in its fanbase. But is this such a bad thing? From my point, the developers don't have an issue with this. I don't think their game wants to become the new Age of Empires. They just want players that grew up with that franchise to come to their game and have more freedom in their own game, but still getting the same experience.
So, which one is better then?
Better? Who said it had to be better than the other one? Of course, Age of Empires has been taking up this RTS territory for the best part of 20 years, yet the developers of Zero AD had the brilliant idea of creating a free open source version, which pleased fans to non-end. This genius move of making Zero AD free to play, and yet with no catches, I might add, like microtransactions, but this lets AoE and Zero AD coexist alongside each other, without making one getting in the way of each other. They both have a purpose in this genre and this gaming industry, and they don't have to knock each other down at all. I have to admit, Age of Empires may still be a little expensive considering its age, yet with Definitive Edition and AoE 4 coming up in the future, getting into the franchise now is a better time than any. And this is where the games match up perfectly to create a symphony of ancient strategy games. Players considering getting into the Age of Empires games that they haven't yet been to, yet they don't really want to cash out the money for this fully fledged game just yet, as they're not sure if they will enjoy it. They should almost certainly pick up Zero AD, as it's completely free and a free to mod and use to your desire with its open source nature. It is almost identical to Age of Empires in terms of playstyle, with a few things here and there, or leaving a few definitions out every now and then, but give or take a bit, it is pretty similar, but you know you're going to get this similar experience either way. From there, players will have this definitive decision whether or not it's feasible for them to get into this full Age of Empires franchise. But furthermore, even a player that's been with AoE since the very beginning has no reason not to pick up Zero AD from their website, as it's a great callback to the simpler days of RTS gaming before the expensive DLC expansions or even microtransactions. But what do you think of Age of Empires and Zero AD? Have you played them both? And if so, I'd love to see your view on each game down below in the comments. Oh, and if this video doesn't reach 500 likes, unfortunately, you're gonna have to suffer the same fate as Hilbert.
Oh, sorry, Father.
Once again, thank you for taking the time out of your very busy lives to pass my corner of the internet, and I can't wait to cover more Age of Empires in the future. But until then, I will see you in the next one.